Okay, let me just get myself situated there. Cut that. Alright, how's it going, everybody? Today I want to talk about breeding your meat rabbits. I'm going to be recording a bunch of videos at the same time, so if I look the same in all my videos, it's because I recorded them the same day. But this one is going to be about how to actually breed the male and female rabbit, the process of putting them together. It's pretty straightforward, but even though they say rabbits breed like rabbits, that's not always the case. A lot of it has to do with genetics, it has to do with nutrition, and just sometimes depends on the buck and the doe. It's not unheard of for a doe not to just not like a buck. Which brings me to my next point. You're going to see, pretty much almost always, when you put a male and a female rabbit together, usually the buck is going to be ready to go. He's going to jump right on there, start motoring right away. But just because that's happening doesn't mean that there's a successful breeding. The thing you really have to look for with a rabbit, this is my buck, by the way, one of my bucks. What you have to look for on the buck is what we call a fall. Now, a fall is when he's going to kick up his back legs and literally fall off the female. Usually they squeak or make a little noise, you'll see here. And that means that the mating was actually successful. And the only way that that happens is if the female lifts up her hind legs and sort of like, for lack of a better word, exposes her rear, allowing the buck to enter. I hope that's not too graphic, but we are talking about breeding here. So yeah, really, the ball is in her court 90% of the time. If you have a buck who's not willing to go after the girl, unless he's got something medically wrong with him, that should not be a buck that you want to keep in your herd. The only time that happens usually is when a buck is very overweight. He gets lazy, but if he's in good condition, that really shouldn't be happening. So if you have that kind of problem with a buck, you're best off just kicking them out of your herd. Sometimes if they have a bad experience their first time, the doe claws them. They'll also be reluctant to breed, but again, usually the buck's the one who's willing. Alright, and also speaking of does clawing, the other thing that's key to keep in mind when you're breeding rabbits, regardless of whether they're meat or not, is you always, always, always take the doe to the buck's cage. That's going to help, number one, because the scent's going to be everywhere. It's going to help probably put her in the mood a little bit. But also, does are extremely territorial. If you've never bred rabbits before, you might be surprised to hear that rabbits can be really, really aggressive. They will tear each other to pieces. And the does are usually worse than the bucks when it comes to that. And if you put them in there, she may well claw his face and possibly even castrate him. They've done that before. Not at my rabbitry, but they have been known to do that. So, very simple. Doe goes to the buck's cage. Buck is going to mount pretty much right away, and you want to see a fall where he squeaks and falls off. That means a successful breeding. It's pretty obvious. You'll see it in the video here. I don't know if this breeding is going to be successful. The girl we're going to be breeding is actually right below him. I bred another doe this morning, and she's doing fine. Obviously, you can see here, I raise New Zealand Reds. I also have a couple whites. I have some Californians. But it's pretty straightforward, like I said. So, without further ado, let me just position you so you get a good view here. One other thing I would mention too is I like to take all the, any feeders you have. This one would normally be hanging outside, but this is an overflow cage. I have a little too many rabbits right now, so it's not cut. So I took this out. I take the water bowl out, definitely, especially when the cage is this small because they're going to get a little rambunctious. Oh yeah, also one other thing to mention, you should probably turn this back over towards me. One other thing to mention is that they say you shouldn't breed in New Zealand until it's 6 months old or so. That's generally true. Especially with females, you want them to be in really good shape. You're looking at a female's adult weight is usually between 10 and 11 pounds. You want, and this is all for New Zealand's, by the way, highly specific to New Zealand's. Same advice for Californians. Most of the meat rabbits are all the same size medium breeds. It's different depending on the size of the rabbit. But for New Zealand's, you want at least 6 months for your females. Males, it's a little more flexible. This guy, he's only 7 pounds and probably about 4 months old, but he's fertile and he's been eager. So as long as you don't put them in with a really aggressive doe, the males are usually good to go a little earlier than the females because their job's a little bit easier. So with that said, let's get the female in here and see if we can get a successful breeding for you guys to see. Now, he's already bred before, so he's going to know what he has to do. Even though he's young, he's bred a few times. Usually, the bucks, the first time they breed... Hold on a second, I got to grab my female here. She's a little skittish. All right. So, yeah, usually... Sorry about that. Got my female. Usually... There she is. She's going to be a lot bigger than him. Number one, usually the females are bigger than the males in most rabbit breeds. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The size difference is going to be important, especially if she's aggressive. So that way you don't have her beating him up on him too much. But the other thing to keep in mind is... Oh, I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. First time around bucks are usually going to have a little harder time, sort of figuring it out. So if you have a doe who's more of an easy breeder, that's probably best for your first-time bucks. Your more experienced bucks can usually handle a bit more stubborn does. So we'll see how he does. So like I said, taking the female to the male's cage. They don't usually waste too much time romancing. They'll usually get right into it. So you can see the buck's on top. He's going. That's a fall. I don't know if you heard him make his little grunting noise. Sort of curled up in a ball. Let me see if I can get you off here. So we'll see if he goes again. I usually like to look for, 2 to 3 falls is really... I mean, she could very well be bred after 1. So I would assume she is if that's all you get. But if you can, 2 to 3 is better. Now see, she's ready to go. She's lifted up. He's a young buck though, so he's not as enthusiastic as some of the older ones. He's still trying to figure stuff out. Yes, she is a girl. Yeah, she's just looking around, which is good. No signs of aggression. She's not trying to attack him. You'll be able to tell pretty quickly if the female's not into it. She'll start growling. She'll probably try to bite him or scratch him. And then you just want to get her out of there and try again another day. I could make a whole video on problems breeding rabbits, because believe it or not, it does happen. I have a female outside who's much more picky. She really does not want to breed. Oh yeah, see, she's ready. He's just got to get back there. Gotta work. There we go. That's another fall. That's what it looks like. Yeah, see, he's a little twitchy now. But yeah, usually females are really only good to breed for, 3 years, or sometimes more, sometimes a little less. But after that, they tend to not want to breed anymore, and, the litter size starts to fall off. You got to make your own rules for your own rabbit project. Yeah, she'll ready to go again. So you see right here how she's lifting. That's what they call it. Her hips are back and positioned upwards. That's a good female. She's ready to go. When they don't want to breed, they'll just tuck that buck right under. Not buck, excuse me, butt. They'll tuck their butt right down. He's just more interested in cleaning himself now. But yeah, so if a female doesn't want to breed, she's continually causing problems for you, not breeding, might be a good idea to cull her. There are tricks. There's a ton of tricks on the internet people say works. I've tried most of them with a female that doesn't want to breed, and sometimes she just won't breed. That's something to keep in mind, and you just usually want to get rid of her. Another thing with rabbits is females will be more reluctant to breed in the winter when it's cold. Not all of them. Some are more than others. And again, one of the big things I think you should select for is ease of breeding. But if it is dead cold winter, most of the girls aren't going to be interested usually. If they are, more power to you, especially if you got a barn like I do. Well, not really a barn, more of a shed. If you keep them indoors, keep them warm. That's a good way to get them bred. Otherwise, it should be no problems. Except, again, the other extreme is the heat of the summer, very hot weather. The females and the males will usually be willing, assuming they don't have, it's too hot that they actually will get heat stroke. But the buck can actually go sterile if it gets too hot out. Which means he'll fall, and it'll look like a successful breeding, but the sperm will be sterile because of the heat. So she won't get pregnant. So depending on your location, you got to kind of figure it out based on your circumstances. I really want to get one more fall here. If you're still with me so far, good for you. I mean, she's fine. It's just a question of this little guy getting up his gumption to go for it one more time. Well, anyways, I'll cut it here. He might get another fall. Hopefully he does. I'll keep in here, keep him going in there. Usually you could leave him in there for about 20 minutes. And male bucks recover really quickly. But we'll see what happens. But in the name of saving you guys time, I'll cut it here. Thanks a lot, guys. I hope you got a lot of this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment. I'm more than happy to do it. Any video suggestions. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe because I'm going to hopefully be making more of these as I go along. Thank you.